Picture this. A missile screams off the launch rail, its rocket motor burning with furious intent. High above, in the thin, dark air at the edge of space, the target is a long, black shape. The crew inside doesn't panic. There are no frantic barrel rolls, no desperate last-second maneuvers. Instead, the pilot simply pushes the throttles forward. The afterburners ignite with a deep roar, the nose lifts just a fraction, and the aircraft accelerates. That was the SR-71 Blackbird's signature move. It didn't dodge missiles, it simply outran them, and it worked every single time. This incredible machine was born from a harsh lesson. In 1960, when a U-2 spy plane was shot down over the Soviet Union, the era of high and slow reconnaissance came to an abrupt and fiery end. The US still needed eyes in the sky over hostile territory, but going high wasn't enough anymore. The answer wasn't to become invisible, it was to become untouchable. To fly so high and so fast that physics itself became a shield. Engineers at Lockheed's legendary Skunk Works took on the challenge. The result was a masterpiece of engineering. A long black dart made mostly of titanium, designed to cruise above 80,000 feet at more than 3 times the speed of sound. Up there, the sky is a deep indigo. You can see the curvature of the Earth, and the air is incredibly thin. Any missile fired from the ground has to fight gravity and claw its way up through that thin atmosphere, all while you're already streaking away at over 2,000 miles per hour. The strategy of just go faster might sound like a joke, but it's pure, beautiful kinematics. A surface-to-air missile, or SAM, only burns its motor for a short time. During that powered phase, it's desperately trying to calculate an intercept point, where you will be, not where you are. But when you light the afterburners and add speed right as it launches, you push that intercept point further and further away. The missile wastes precious fuel just trying to keep up. By the time its motor burns out, it's just a glider with fins, bleeding energy in the thin air, while you're still accelerating. The geometry breaks in your favor. The missile falls away, defeated not by a fancy maneuver, but by simple physics. Of course, surviving at that speed is a monumental challenge. At Mach 3+, the friction from the air heats the Blackbird's skin to over 500 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt conventional aluminum. That's why the SR-71 is built from titanium. The heat is so intense that the entire airframe expands in flight, literally growing a few inches longer. That's also why the jet famously leaked fuel on the ground. It was designed that way. The fuel tanks and panels would only seal up properly once they heated up and expanded at cruising speed. It wasn't a flaw. It was a feature of a machine designed to live at the edge of the atmosphere. Even the fuel was special. The Blackbird burned a unique blend called JP7, a high flashpoint kerosene so stable you could drop a lit match into a bucket of it, and the match would just go out. The jet used this fuel as a coolant, circulating it through the airframe to absorb the blistering heat before it was injected into the engines. So speed creates heat. The heat warms the fuel cools the jet, allowing it to go even faster. It's a perfect, self-sustaining loop dedicated to one thing: continuous, extreme velocity. And the engines? Those 2 massive Pratt & Whitney J58s were marvels. At high speed, they acted more like ramjets. Each engine nacelle features a giant, movable cone, or spike, that slides forward and back. This spike creates a perfectly positioned shockwave that slows the supersonic air down to subsonic speeds just before it enters the engine compressor. This is what allowed the engines to breathe at Mach 3. The faster the Blackbird went, the more air was rammed into the inlets, and the more thrust it produced. When a missile launch was detected, the pilot slammed the throttles forward, the spikes adjusted, the afterburners kicked in, and the jet surged forward with incredible power. So, how did the crew know a missile was coming? The SR-71 was a fantastic listener. Its defensive systems could sniff out enemy radar signals. It could tell the difference between a radar just searching the sky and one that had locked on, preparing to fire. As soon as a launch was detected, the crew had a 2-part playbook. First, Powerful electronic countermeasures would activate to jam and confuse the missile's guidance system. Second, the pilot would execute the kinetic escape, push the throttles, and start a shallow climb. You blind the missile's eyes, and you break its body with physics. It's this 1-2 punch that gave the Blackbird its perfect combat record. Imagine the view from that cockpit. It's noon, but the sky above is black. Stars are visible. A warning tone chirps in your headset. You've been locked. Another tone. Launch. Throttles to the wall. You feel a solid push in your back as the jet surges. The altimeter climbs steadily. Far below, you might see a tiny needle of white smoke climbing toward you, before it winks out as the missile's motor dies. Now, it's just an unpowered piece of metal trying to catch something that is accelerating away into near space. The threat disappears from your screen. You log the launch for the intelligence report and calmly continue your mission. What about fighter jets? Some tried to intercept the Blackbird, like the formidable Soviet MiG-25 Foxbat. But the SR-71 didn't play their game. It didn't get caught low and slow. It arrived in hostile airspace already at speed and altitude, and then got faster. By the time an enemy fighter could scramble and climb to 80,000 feet, the Blackbird they were chasing was hundreds of miles away, a ghost on their radar screen. But all this speed would be useless without incredible precision. This was before the age of GPS, so the SR-71 used a brilliant piece of technology called an astro-inertial navigation system. It had a small quartz window on top and a sensor that would lock onto stars, even in broad daylight, to constantly correct its position. This allowed it to cross entire continents at Mach 3 and arrive over a target at a precise second. Of course, an engine this powerful is incredibly thirsty. So missions involved a carefully choreographed dance with special KC-135Q tankers. The Blackbird would refuel right after takeoff, climb to the stratosphere, perform its high-speed run, and then refuel again on the way home. Every part of the Blackbird's iconic shape serves a purpose. The sharp, blended Chinese running along the fuselage generate lift at high speeds. The special black paint, which contains tiny iron particles, helps radiate heat away from the airframe. Everything about its design was a solution to the problem of sustained Mach 3 flight. 2 quick myths to bust. First, was it invisible to radar? No, radars could see it. The point was, seeing it and catching it were 2 very different things. Second, did it only run away? No. It combined powerful electronic jamming with its incredible speed. It was a complete survival package. So, if no missile or fighter could touch it, what finally retired the Blackbird? Ultimately, it was budgets and new technology. Reconnaissance satellites could perform many of the same imaging missions without risking a crew. And the development of true stealth aircraft, like the F-117 and B-2, offered a new way to penetrate enemy airspace, by being quiet and sneaky instead of loud and fast. The SR-71 was incredibly expensive to operate, and its mission profile became less critical. But the lesson of the Blackbird remains. It was more than just an airplane. It was a complete system. Every part was interconnected. The need for speed demanded titanium, which demanded new manufacturing techniques. The extreme heat demanded special fuel, which demanded special tankers. It's a testament to the idea that when you push the boundaries of physics, every single detail matters. All of that incredible engineering, all that speed and heat and danger, existed for one reason: to get a camera or sensor over a target. For a few brief seconds, a window in the jet's belly would open, capturing images of airfields, shipyards, or missile sites. You got one pass. And if a missile came up to greet you, you executed the play, not for glory, but for the data. Because bringing that information home meant giving decision makers the answers they needed to keep the world safe. That was the SR-71's real mission. It didn't win dogfights, it won the Cold War, one high-speed photo run at a time. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this look at a true aviation legend, be sure to like, subscribe, and fly high.